Now, the reason why you're feeling burned out in your current job, there's only two reasons why. Number one, it's either a problem with the environment, the job itself, or it's a problem with you. There's something about you that's not really working, matching that environment. Now, it's not quite that simple, right? Because if you're in a job that you initially really loved, it was a really great fit, maybe the first 6 months were great, something sort of happened, a shift happened where you started feeling overwhelmed or burned out or a little resentful. There's a mystery here, right? So it's not just the job itself, or it's not just you, it's a combination of both. So let's really tease this out and try to figure out why you might be feeling burned out. And let's first start with toxic workplace environments and identify these. Some are pretty obvious, but there's some subtle things about a bad workplace environment. Let's do that first, then we'll get to you. So first, let me share a story. The reason why I got into the business that I'm in, into career counseling, into executive and business coaching, is that I worked in a job in the tech sector and I was making really good money. I was very ambitious. I was talented. I was really enjoying the job for about the first 6 months to a year. And then I started feeling burned out. And in fact, other people in the company felt a little burned out too. And what happened was they brought in a psychologist to work with us, a business coach. And this business coach was terrible, very well intended, had great intentions, but honestly was only working with one part of the problem, was only looking at the employees and what are the problems personally with the employees. In fact, this particular person did psychological testing on us, had us work in small groups, did all these sort of bonding activities, but was not looking at the other part of the equation, which was the system, the actual job itself. And I got to experience this whole scenario, and it was really demotivating, but it was the catalyst for me of getting into this profession. So I went to grad school and studied counseling psychology, got really interested in system dynamics and workplace dynamics. So that's what I do. So now, at this job, it was so bad that I started feeling really stressed out, really questioning myself. It was almost like gaslighting in a way. But again, the intentions were really good. So I'm not blaming the company or this particular person who came in. I just think that they were uninformed. They didn't really know the big picture. They didn't really quite understand that. But I ended up quitting, and it kind of drove me out of this job. But I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want you to be quitting a job without really understanding all the reasons why maybe it's not going well. It's fine to leave a job if you really understand what's going on and can make an informed decision. But I don't want people, just burning out and quitting. So again, let's look at the two reasons why you're feeling maybe burned out in your job. Number one, let's look at workplace kind of toxic environments. Obviously, there's pretty good examples. If there's high churn in a workplace, that's a pretty good indicator that the problem is not with the employees, it's with either the leadership or the structure or the workflow or something in that workplace system, okay? So again, that's obvious when it's really toxic and there's high churn, but let's get into more subtle things about not so functional workplaces. And I alluded to workflow. If a company is taking on too much work, they're saying yes to clients all the time, and they're backed up, almost like a pipeline that's backed up. That is not a sustainable model. And what's going to happen is that the employees, they're going to say yes, and they're going to get burned out. And so you got to be really honest about that pipeline of workflow. But if you're an employee and you notice that you're getting too much work and you're not able to do a really good job that you feel proud of, then you need to speak up and you need to talk to leadership. Now, if the leadership's not willing to listen to you and is in denial about this workflow problem, that's a pretty good indication that things aren't going to change, okay? And you may want to look for a different job. So that's one reason why the workplace might be the problem is simply workflow. It's not an honest, sustainable workflow, and people are going to start leaving, okay? So let me give you another example of maybe a more subtle workplace problem. And this is lack of job description or lack of hierarchy or boundaries within the company. The more people, the more complex it gets, the more clear you really need to be about what your position is. So look at your organization, and if you can't really write down your job description, that's a problem. If you can't really write down the job description of your boss or your coworker, that's a problem. And what you might be noticing is that there is overlap and confusion, and you don't want to step on people's toes because you don't know if they're higher up than you or not, okay? So an indication that you are in a bad workplace environment is that there's that lack of job description, lack of clear hierarchy. How does it work? How does the decision-making chain of command go? If that's not there, you may need to be looking for a different job. Okay, now let's get to you. All right, let's get down to how you and your personality and your style interfaces with that job environment. We talked about how the job is obviously the problem, and high churn is a big indicator that the job structure, place is a problem. Let's talk about you, okay? So maybe there is no churn in the job. Maybe leadership is great. Maybe everything is pointing to the fact that it is a functional, good place to work, yet you are feeling burned out. You're feeling unmotivated. You're feeling resentful for some reason. Why? Okay. The problem is you, okay? And what I don't mean like you suck or like you don't have the skills or you don't have the drive. I'm talking about you're ambitious, you took on the job, it was a great fit, and you're enthusiastic, but something has happened. And I want to give you the top reasons why you're feeling burned out or unmotivated at your job when you know it's actually a good job, right? So number one is that you may be saying yes too much. You don't delegate, or you don't say, hey, I can't take on this meeting. The workflow, remember talking about workflow, you're in denial about workflow. You think you can do more than a human can actually do. And this is a problem for a lot of high achievers, is that you think you can take on more. You can do it short term, which is a great skill to have, but it's not sustainable. You're going to feel a little bit burned out. And people get used to your style. They say, oh, he can take on all this stuff. I'm just going to keep giving him work, right? You've set the tone up front. And the problem is now you don't want to push back because you're afraid of sort of changing your personality. And I'm here to tell you, if that's your style, you need to push back. You need to communicate that you're going to start reducing your work intake. And you may be worried, oh, I'm going to get fired, right? If you're already a super rock star and you're just really honest with your boss or whoever you report to, just simply say, I need to reduce workflow a bit. I need to focus more on quality than quantity. If you're a rock star, people will understand. They will not want you to leave, okay? So don't be afraid of that. All right, the second big reason why you might be feeling burned out in your job, but your job itself is great, is that you might be a people pleaser. So similar to saying yes too much and not delegating is something called people pleasing. And what this is, it's your maybe a little conflict avoidant. But part of being a team, it's almost like a sports team, okay? If you don't speak up, if you don't push back on things and really just be a representative for your position, what you do, if you're not honest with people, that's going to come and bite you. Again, you're going to be feeling resentful. There's going to be some problems in that workflow. So people pleasing is a big problem. If you can get past that, and I'll give you a couple tips. Number one is what's called the power of the pause. If you feel weird about saying no or pushing back, you can just simply say, hey, thanks for that meeting invite. Can I get back to you? Because I might have a conflict with my work. Let me get back to you in like an hour or tomorrow. What you're doing is you're putting off that sort of conflict or confrontation. It's not a confrontation, but it's pushing back. You're giving some pause and you're saying, hey, give me a minute. Let me get back to you. And that buys you some time so you can work up the courage to say no to something. Okay, so it's a great strategy for people pleasing. The second strategy to reduce people pleasing is to remember that it's not your company. What I mean here is realize that you are getting paid in the marketplace for your labor, for your expertise, and it's not your company. So you don't have to bend over backwards because you're not making all the profit. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean being selfish. This just means being fair to you. The contract that you have with your employer is that they pay you a certain amount of money, maybe bonuses also, to perform. That's it, right? Now, you need to perform commensurate with that payment. Don't do more because you're going to get resentful or burned out, okay? Doesn't mean that you're not a rock star. It just means like don't torture yourself. Don't be a martyr. Don't take on all that extra stuff. No one's expecting you to because there's an exchange of your labor for the pay. Okay, got it? All right, so I'm gonna wrap up this video. I'm gonna keep it short. Just real simple. It's two things. It's either a problem with the workplace, problem with some of your skills with people, some of your boundaries, etc., or it's a subtle combination of both. But I've given you some examples of how to really discern what the issue is. So analyze that, write this down on a piece of paper, 2-column, problems with job, problems with me, question mark, right? And try to figure out what some of those things are. And by the time you get done, you're going to have some ideas. You may need to have a tough conversation with your boss or coworkers or something like that. But don't fear that, right? If people are reasonable at your job, over communication is better than under communication. Okay. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Michael Ceely. I'm a career coach, business coach, coach entrepreneurs. I also do counseling and psychotherapy, and I'd be happy to help if you're having some issues in this career area. Thanks for watching.